In this video, we're going to be chatting about AWS Amplify Studio. We'll use the backend data modeling capabilities to create a quotes data model, and then we'll use the Figma to code functionality to create React components based off of a designer's designs. We'll display all of our quotes on the page and also create a form. When we're done, the application will look like this, and a form to create a new quote. There will also be a search so that you can find different quotes or different authors. I'm Allie Spittle. I lead developer advocacy for AWS Amplify, and I'm going to be teaching you all about Amplify throughout this tutorial. First, I'll go to the AWS console and go to AWS Amplify. From here, I'll create a new app and select Build an App. If you're new to Amplify, there will be two options on a landing page instead. I'll choose an app name and then confirm deployment. Now that I have a Studio instance, I'll click Launch Studio. Now I'll go to Create Data Model. I'll call each motivational quote a thought, and each one is going to have an author as well as some text. Both of these will be string fields, but if I needed to change them, I could. Now I'll save and deploy. Note that I could also create multiple data models and have relationships between them. Now that my data model has deployed, I'm going to go to the UI Library tab. I'll click Get Started, and here you can use the Figma template to get started. You can click Duplicate here, and you can also use the AWS Amplify theme editor. In Figma, I went ahead and customized some components. So here's an item card. This will be what stores a quote. Here's a form to create a quote, so it has the name and then the quote. And then I have a hero for the top of the page. And I went into this AWS Amplify theme editor plugin, and I added different brand colors. In my case, a yellow and a pink. And I made sure that all of my different components followed the colors that I wanted to have. I'll copy the URL of my Figma file and paste it into this Figma file link. My theme will load in, and then I can accept or reject components. I'll select Accept All. I'll start with the item card and click Configure. From here, I'll set the text label to the thought.text, and then I'll set the text label to the thought.author. By default, this will show you randomly generated thoughts, but I can add some content so that my actual quotes show up. I'll switch over to the Content tab. Now, if I go back to my component, my actual data will load in, and I can shuffle to see all of them. I'm going to create a collection since I want all of my different thoughts to be displayed. I'll call my collection Thoughts. I'll add in search, and I'll also add pagination if there are more than 30 quotes. I'm going to create a grid and add in 3 columns instead of 2. I'll add 10 pixels of margin on each side of my cards. You can also add different filters or sort conditions if you want to show a subset of your data or your data in a specific order. Now I'll go to this Create Quote form. I'm going to start off with setting this placeholder to an inspirational thought. Then on save, I'll add an on-click action, and in this case, I'll create a new instance of the thought model. The author will be the name here, and then the text will be the quote. Now my form is good to go. Now for my hero, I'll click Configure again. This top text I'll just set as a daisy. This one I'll say Happy Thoughts. I'll set the text label here to motivational quotes there. And then for this button here, I'm going to set the label to be Create Thought. And I'll also set an on-click action. This one will go to URL, and that URL will be /create thought. I also want to set this image to a picture of daisies. Now that I have my components configured and tied to my data, I want to add this to my local application. I'm going to create a Next.js application called Motivational Quotes. You could also use Create React App if you want. I'm just going to use Next.js for routing. I'm not going to use any of the SSR or SSG that it provides. I'll change into the directory that I just created, and I'm going to go to local setup instructions. I'll copy this command and paste it into my terminal. I'll log into the CLI, choose my editor, and select all the defaults here. A quick note, you will need to install the Amplify command line interface if you haven't already. There are instructions on how to do that under View Amplify CLI Installation Instructions. I'll open up the code in my text editor, and within Source you can see that Amplify generated models to go along with my thought model, as well as these UI components. If you go into them, you can see that they model what you would do as a developer, and all of the names fit according to the names of the items that you create within Figma. Each one also has the ability to be overridden, so you can use this key in order to write your own custom code for any of these components. I'll need to install the Amplify libraries and UI components. Now I'm going to go into my _app.js file and configure Amplify. The AWS exports is a configuration file with all the information about where my backend is on AWS. And so when I run the amplify.configure, it will tie my front end to my backend that I already created. I'll import the Amplify provider component and use it as the top level of my application. This will pass theming down to my whole app. I created that UI theme within Figma, so I'm going to go into my UI components and you'll see that there's a studio theme that's generated. I'll pass my studio theme to the Amplify provider as the theme prop. The last thing that I need to configure is the Amplify CSS file. Now I'll move to my index.js file. I'll clear out what's here now, and I'll render the hero layout 1 on the page. Note that I'll need to import it from the UI components. I'll start my development server. Now you can see that my hero component is rendered on the page. There are two things that I want to do. First, make it so that it is 100% the width of the page. The other one is to import the Amplify fonts. If you go to ui.docs.amplify.aws and then scroll down on the installation page, you'll see a link to a font. You can also use a font that you want to use as well. I'll paste this into my styles global.css. Now my font's the nice sans serif that I was seeing in Studio. I'll set the width to 100%, and now it stretches the page instead of just being part of it. Now I want to render my quotes underneath it. The thoughts will also be imported from the UI components. I'll add a margin bottom to my hero layout so that my search doesn't interfere with my hero. All of the data that I created within the Amplify CMS loads onto the page. The last thing that I need to do is implement my form. When I click on that Create button, it redirects me to Create Thought. I'm going to create a Next.js route for this. Create a file called the Create Thought, and I'll create a React component within it. I'll import the Create Quote form, and now let's test it out. I'll add in a random name, and then click Save. Now if I go to my home page, my new quote loaded in. Saves a lot of time compared to writing a form from scratch. Everything in these generated components are overridable within code. You can again pass an override object to a component in order to override anything within them. You can pass override items to a collection, like these quotes down here, and that will allow you to modify certain items within that collection. In this video, we created a data model within Amplify Studio and then used Amplify Studio's Figma to React in order to generate React components from Figma designs. We then added it all to a Next.js application. If you wanted to, you could add authentication through Amplify Studio or storage for files as well. I'd love to see what you build as you continue creating with AWS Amplify Studio.